I'll call this one practice assignment. You can put spaces in the name, but I would recommend against that. So whatever name you come up with, make sure it's a unique name and descriptive. And I wouldn't put spaces in the between the different words on whatever name you come up with. Make sure you know where it's being saved at. In this case, I've got the path to where this is going to be saved at. It's going to be saved in my repository, so I know where that's going to be created at. Okay, solution name, and since this isn't going to be a large program, I'm going to leave the project name and the solution name the same, and later on you'll see why, the difference between project and solution. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and create this, and it's going to go ahead and build a coding stub for me. We'll see this in a minute. I'm going to go ahead and pause for a minute while this runs. Okay, and I'm back. So it created a stub for me, and I'll go over this in some of the other examples that I've created. But in this case, it created, it packaged my computer statements in a way to where it's organized them to where everything's inside of a namespace. And then that namespace has a name that I created. And then inside of this namespace, I've got a class. By default, it's called program. But I can rename this. Rename, right click. I highlighted the whole thing and then click rename. And I'll call it practice. And apply that so everywhere that the name program was, it's going to be changed in the code to practice, and I'll apply that. Okay. So inside of the namespace, there's a class. Later on, there'll be more than one class, but for now, there's just one class. I'll collapse this down so you can see. Collapse the class down. So you see inside of this namespace, I've got one class called practice. I'll expand that out again. And then you notice inside of practice, and everything is separated by these curly braces. This namespace, here's the beginning curly brace, here's the ending curly brace. For the class, here's the beginning curly brace, and here's the ending curly brace. And inside of the class practice, I've got one, and I'll call this a method, and it's called the main method. This is the starting point for our code inside of this main method. And again, it starts with this curly brace and ends with this curly brace. And then there's a C# statement, and this code comes with C#. And this code, in this case, says, write this line to the console, which is a little window that's going to pop up. And this line, display anything between these parentheses. And inside of these parentheses, I have double quotes. So it's saying literally print whatever's between these double quotes. And I can, between these double quotes, I can literally print anything I want. Okay. Okay, so when the program runs, it's going to see that there's a namespace, and then it's going to come to the class, and then inside the class, it's going to start running this code from inside this main method. And so this main method says, write this line, whatever's between these double quotes, to the console window. So I'm going to go ahead and run that. And I'm going to say debug. Let me see if I need to move this down a bit, don't I? See if I can grab this and move this down. Let's see if you can see all that there. And now I'm going to say debug start without debugging. So I'm going to run this, and I'm going to pause again because this is going to take a while to build and run. Okay, so it finally popped up, and it says what I told it to, which was print anything I want. And then it's got some information about where that file is located at, and if it exited okay, code 0 means it worked okay. And then it tells me that I can press any key to close this console window. So it did what I told it to, which was write this line, print anything I want, which is this right here, to the console window. And this whole window is the console window. And then that's all there is in that code. So I can press any key, and that will end my program. Okay, so I can use this to practice any of that code. And the reason, well, let's go and take a look at it. I'm going to minimize this, and I've got go to my first assignment. It'll let me in. Okay, so we have MindTap assignments, YouTube demo and getting started with MindTap. MindTap. There are examples of how to solve some of the problems that are in MindTap. I'll look at that in a second. So for now, you want to watch this video on getting started with MindTap. And so if you've started Visual Studio, you should practice with Visual Studio and write a little program, something similar to, or one of the programs that you'll go through while you're in MindTap. And then when you're ready, you may not need to submit anything with this first assignment other than, let me go ahead and click Submit Assignment. Okay, so the only thing you have to do is to answer these questions. So I'll do that. Copy. I'll paste this in here. And I'll answer these questions. Did you complete the MindTap assignment? Not yet. Did you set up Visual Studio, or do you have access to Visual Studio? And there's a lot of different versions of Visual Studio, not Visual Studio Code, although you could use that. But if you have a computer that can run Visual Studio 2019 or whatever version is available now, I would definitely advise to do that. It is really going to be helpful in the long run. So, yep, I did that. How long did it take to complete this assignment? If you're new to coding, it may have taken several hours. So, maybe Okay. And then I click. So I could have done the same thing. I could have put all this in comments, but since there was a text tab available for me, I used that. So if that's everything, I can click submit assignment, and it will tell me eventually that I've submitted my assignment, the date and time I submitted my assignment, and if I want to resubmit it, if I've submitted with some code or some other things, and then I saw something that I left off, I have to resubmit everything. Otherwise, it'll just overwrite. It doesn't give me versions of what has been submitted. You have to resubmit everything. Okay, so let's go take a look at MindTap. We'll jump over here and look at MindTap if it's still available. Okay, so I'm going to look over here and see that getting started with MindTap should go through those. You can download your data files to use with Visual Studio if you want. Your first program using C#. So Unit 1, go through all the reading. There's things that you can use to reinforce that information, and I would advise not to take any shortcuts. Go through all of these. It takes a long time, but it's going to pay off in the long run. If you try to take shortcuts and jump over stuff now, it's really going to hurt later on. So take your time, go through everything. And then the coding programming exercise 1-1. Okay, well, there's a tutorial that's already in Canvas that will take you through these tutorials. I don't know if all of those are in there, the debugging and the case problem and all that, but if you have any questions, you can always contact me. Okay, and then you've got a quiz that you can complete that's available after you get done with your coding. Okay, so usually every week you'll be completing one of these units, sometimes more than one unit. Kind of depends on what is going on. But check out the due dates and make sure you get those submitted early. You don't want to wait till the last minute to do that. Okay, let's take a look at one of these. I'll go to programming exercise. I'll go to the first one. So it builds a little coding sandbox for us. Sandbox is a safe place to write code. Gives you the instructions here. And it wants this for an output. Okay. So once you get all this written, what you can do is you can test each one of these, and well, I usually write my code in Visual Studio, and then I'll paste it back in here, and then I'll run it to see if everything runs okay. And then I'll go through and come down here to task and see if the output is what is expected. It's a little picky. The sandbox is a little picky. So be careful that you get everything the way that it wants. Okay, and after that you'll get your score, whatever score is on that particular assignment. Okay, I think I'm going to leave it there. There should be a couple different places when you run into problems with these coding assignments. there should be a couple places where you can find help on writing this code. And so check with the instructor, check with if we have a tutor available this semester, then check with the tutor. And good luck. I'm going to go ahead and stop it there.